everyone and welcome back. So today I'm going to teach you how to create a custom Funko like this or like this or like this. Now I have made quite a few of these and I have done quite a few time-lapse videos showing how I made each one. However, I wanted to do a full-on tutorial video showing you how you can make any. Now I'm going to fill a lot of info into this and I hope you enjoy. So the first step to doing this is you need a concept. I really do prefer to do an illustration of a Funko, and you can basically just trace over, the custom Funko shape and add your own details on top of this to create something which your final result is going to look like. Now this is actually a pretty crucial step because you need to figure out how the details of what you're going to work with is going to work on the Funko base shape and size. I've actually once done this without doing the concept sketch, and it actually gave me a little bit of issues later down when I couldn't exactly figure out the shape of the body and the length, and the body kind of ended up a little bit longer than I would have liked. So I kind of wish I went back and did a sketch that helped me sort of figure out that shape and style. It also helps with leaving the experimenting to this stage because something you may think looks good may not end up looking sort of good for that sort of shape and style, and that way you don't end up wasting clay or anything like that in the later stages. Now this is also quite useful for when you are doing it for commissions, as you can send the sketch off to your client and sort of work with them to figure out the design and all the sort of little details that they want down, and then after they sort of approve that final sketch, you can then go off and make your Funko figure the way that the sketch looks. So now that we've got that out of the way, the next step is sculpting. This is probably the most exciting part. You finally got your design how you want it to be, and yeah, you can't wait to just dive into sculpting. Stop. There are quite a few different types of clay and materials that you can use to sculpt with. You can use sort of air dry clays and multiple different kinds of clays to do this with. My favorite though is polymer clay. The reason I choose polymer clay over another sort of clay like the air hardening ones is that it is much stronger. Polymer clay you do have to bake, and don't worry about that, I will get to that in the sort of later stages. So there are multiple different kinds of polymer clays you can use and they're not all equal. Personally, my favorite is the Fimo brand. That one, I just feel like it is a lot more stronger. It's harder clay. It's more durable, less likely to break. However, other clays like Sculpey and different brands of polymer clays are still good to use. I still prefer the Fimo though because I feel like the hardness of the clay sort of fits best onto the base. I feel like it adheres just a little bit better onto the base, and yeah, it doesn't have any sort of issues falling off or anything like that. Now the sculpting is actually one of the most fun parts of this whole process, but it's also the most time consuming. Now I'm starting off here with a Funko base. Now they do make these in a few different colors and also in a few different styles. There is a male and a female body shape, which is really convenient for when you are sort of creating characters of different genders and body styles. Now I'm actually going to start off by talking about how you can create different clothes for your Funko, because obviously different people will have different outfits, and sometimes you need to learn how to sort of create certain styles. So I'm starting off here with some pants. Now the pants that I'm actually creating for this character, which is an anime character from One Punch Man. He has sort of bandages around his legs, and he also has a ripped hole on his pants here where you can sort of see his knee. Now I start off just by sort of rolling out some clay in some really thin sheets and cutting it to shape and size that would fit around his legs, as when you're adding clothes you really want to add that sort of bulk on there instead of just painting the clothes on, because you really want it to look sort of 3D and realistic. I'm actually using a pasta roller for this, and it is really convenient for rolling out polymer clay in thin sheets and different sizes, and that's actually how I got all of the bandages as well. I basically just rolled out a little snake shape that was really long, and then I put it through my pasta roller, and that made it very flat and long, and it was perfect for bandages. Now this next character here, I'm giving him a bit of a baggy jumper, and I'm just using some sort of sausage shapes wrapped around to create the rolls of the fabric. And this is also really convenient for adding the sort of hoodie around his neck. And I'm also using more of that sort of rolled out flat clay for the areas where the clothes aren't actually wrinkled. So for the clothes on this character, he's basically just wearing some simple dungarees or overalls, whatever you like to call them, and it's a bit more of a cartoony character, so I'm mainly adding 3D details over the shoulders where the sort of straps go over his shoulders, as well as a little shape for the pocket. This little tiny detail here actually really helps accent it and just make it look that little bit much cuter. So for now, sculpting hair, it's actually not that scary that you think it would be. I'm actually using a bit of tin foil here to bulk out the main shape. Now, when you're using large sort of shapes, you really want something in the middle that isn't clay, because otherwise it's not going to bake evenly and it's going to be very heavy and you're going to waste a lot of clay. So I really like to sort of bulk out that shape and start the sort of areas with tin foil, and yeah, I like to cover it with some thin rolled out sheets of clay, and then also use a little bit of liquid Sculpey or liquid Fimo just to sort of glue it to the head a little bit, just so that it seals, because we're using a small amount of clay for the initial layer. Now after this, to create the locks of hair, I'm just rolling out some sort of snake shapes, chopping them, and then sort of rolling them into little triangle shapes that I then add onto the head as spikes of hair. Now for some characters you want to change the whole body shape and sort of limbs, because with creatures that aren't exactly human, you don't want human features. So a lot of the time I will chop off the arms and legs, or I'll add on features. Now with adding on sort of limbs and stuff that you create yourself, you really want to have a bit of support in there, and I like to use a bit of armature wire inside that. It just stops it from breaking and also gives a little bit of support while the clay is still sort of malleable and soft. And it also prevents it from breaking when the clay is also dry, because you really don't want it to crack and, you know, a tail or an ear falls off. That's just something you really want to avoid. Now to connect things like that to the body, I like to drill a hole in the body or the limbs, and I will fill it in with some liquid Fimo, liquid Sculpey, or some clay, and then after that I will actually bake it and fire it, and once it's baked, it will be a lot stronger and it will stay put. Now sometimes with characters where you've severely changed the body shape, it won't be as stable, and sometimes it'll need a little bit of help standing up. So a lot of the time I will like to make a bit of a stand for it to stand on that it's glued to. So step 3, we are on to baking the clay. Now that you've finally got your clay how you like, you've got your piece ready to be fired in the oven, because polymer clays are oven hardening, there are a few things you need to sort of think about. First is you need to stick to the directions of the Fimo. With Fimo, I believe it is 110 degrees Celsius that you have to bake it at, but definitely look at the directions on the packet because different brands of polymer clays will have different temperatures. I believe the Sculpey that I have also used is 130 degrees, so definitely check those out. And don't worry, I have gotten so many questions and so many confused comments saying, won't the Funko base melt if you put it in the oven? And the quick answer is no. The long answer is it could, but it's very, 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 very unlikely. You see, as long as you stick to the temperatures of the polymer clay, it's not going to melt. It's got a quite high temperature. The vinyl that they use in the Funko bases is very strong and quite temperature resistant. It's not going to melt into a puddle as long as you stick to the temperatures on the polymer clay. As you see, polymer clay itself is plastic, and yes, it does sort of melt when you put it in the oven, except it's mainly just the small tiny fragments of plastic inside the clay that melt, and they sort of meld together and turn into a hard plastic thing. But if that temperature was hot enough to actually properly melt plastic, then the temperature is going to melt the plastic thing that you are baking in the oven at the moment, which it doesn't. But don't freak out. It will get sort of soft when you take it out of the oven. It will be a little bit wobbly, a little bit bouncy, and that is completely normal. That is just it reacting to the temperatures and going a little bit soft and malleable. But it's not going to actually get wrecked or anything like that. It will harden up as it cools down back to its normal temperature. So that's normal. Now the next step, step 4, is painting. But before we get onto that, we actually have to seal it. Now I prefer to use a sort of a primer, and that will help with the adhesion of the paint onto the surface, and it would just make it so much better. You want to paint your custom Funko because there are different colors and stuff that you can get with polymer clay. However, the Funko base itself is a plain white, so you're going to have to add your own details and stuff on there. And my favorite thing to use is acrylic paint. I love to use acrylic paint for my Funko figures because it is quick drying, it's quite strong and also flexible, and it's also very opaque and waterproof. I'll start off with some block colors of the main areas that I will need to fill in, and then after that I'll go over with details and highlights and that kind of thing. For this character, I actually did a darker layer of red over the hair, and then after that dried, I went over with a lighter color of red and sort of left those little parts of dark red in the grooves, and that actually really helped sort of define the locks of hair and all of the shadows and stuff. And yeah, it was actually quite fun and really good and easy to do. You don't actually have to sort of brush the paint on. A lot of people will use airbrushes and stuff like that to paint on their Funkos, but I don't own anything like that, and I kind of really enjoy the look of like hand painted things. The little paintbrush strokes in there sort of make it look a little bit more handmade and a bit more hand loved, and I just like to do it that way. But of course you can do it any way you like because this is your creation and it is your figure, and you gotta make sure that you're happy with it. After this, it is time to add details. Now you can do that with paint, however there are quite a few things you can do differently, and it can make it a little bit easier. I will use a huge range of different stuff to add details on. Sometimes my hands aren't that steady to do really tiny thin paintbrush strokes with acrylic paint, but a good hack is to use a watercolor pencil to draw because it will be nice and dark and strong. I've also used Posca pens in the past, and also watercolor paint, and also fine liners and stuff like that as well, and they're all good and all convenient. Just use what is good for you. Now know I'm gonna get these comments, so I'm just gonna say yes, Funko Pop figures can definitely have mouths, and a lot of them actually do, including eyes. This is your figure and you can create it the way you want. So now that your Funko almost looks fully complete, there are a few things you can do further to make sure your Funko lasts longer and looks its best, and that is adding sealants. Now there's a few different kinds that you can use. I have used a whole bunch, and I'm going to talk about the best ones you can use to seal your Funko. There's a lot of different sealants that you can use. Some are water based and some are solvent based. So if you're going to use water based, make sure you have a bit of a protective layer over the top, like a fixative, so that things like your watercolor paints and watercolor pencils aren't going to smear. Now the Fimo gloss varnish I've found is way too glossy. It's very, very shiny, but I have used it in the past on my first figure. But I prefer matte varnishes. I just think that they look way cooler. So here is the final results for this Funko that I made specifically for this video. This is actually one for a commission going to the same person as my last one. And yeah, I can't wait to see them enjoy that. So there we have it. That is how you can create an anime character or your own OC, which is adorable. And yeah, I hope you guys have so much fun. I had the best time creating these, and they're super fun to do, and I'm kind of addicted to doing them actually. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something. I hope you learned how to create your own Funko if you're into that. And yeah, if you have any questions at all, please put them down below in the comments. I will be in the comments helping out anyone who is interested in making their own Funkos. Perhaps I didn't touch on a topic that you wanted to talk about, or you just want some advice. I'm happy to help with all of your creative affairs. That is basically what I want to do on this channel. So again, I'll thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day. Please smash like and subscribe to get your scribble fix in the future, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.